That's my boy. No, my boy! Father, help!
So here's the thing. This is me. Well, okay, it was me when I was a small child. Not a care in the world, not a thought in my head. And when I was a kid, basically right up until I was like 11 or 12, I was the most pleasant goddamn child in the world. I didn't act out, I did well in school, I was always smiling, and I was happy. Just a peaceful little kid trying to make the world a little more peaceful. But as the years have gone by, I can feel myself drifting farther and farther away from being that little boy from the Bronx. Middle school came, and I've mentioned a couple times how, that sucked. And then high school, which is really where shit started to go downhill. I started making mistakes, doing things I'm not proud of, and just generally becoming the exact kind of person that little 8-year-old me wouldn't have been too thrilled about. In contrast, this is my dad. And my dad was and is a pretty decent guy. I have a lot of really fond memories with my dad. Going to baseball games, going to the movies, that time I busted my knee at the playground and he ran all the way there to carry me home. But in that same vein, I have some really complicated feelings about and issues with my dad. As I've gotten older, my issues haven't really gotten better or lessened, I've just gotten better at articulating them, at knowing why my dad pisses me off so much, why he's so good at getting under my skin, why we'll never be able to agree on some of the very most important things, and most importantly, why I still love him after all of that. All that said, I want to circle back to the good stuff. My fondest memories with my dad involve exploring the extensive libraries of the PlayStation 2 and 3, and playing a bunch of games I definitely shouldn't have at certain ages. I have such pristine memories of playing video games with my dad, either cooperatively or taking turns through campaigns, in stuff like Stranglehold, Vin Diesel's Wheelman, Batman Arkham Asylum, Shadow of the Colossus, and the Uncharted series. God fucking damn, I gotta make a video about the Uncharted series someday. And chief among them are my memories of playing through the original God of War games, action games that truly shaped my childhood. And more recently, I remember my dad, who hadn't played video games in years, being excited for the return of God of War in 2018, the first game I ever pre-ordered with my own money. And after playing through that with him, not handing off the controller like we used to, but playing through on my own separate save file, and playing through Ragnarok and Valhalla on my own, and after reminiscing on my memories of these games and sitting for so long with this series, I think I'm ready to put it in a video. I'm ready to talk about why God of War means everything to me. I feel like it's easy to start a discussion of the narrative and emotional power of God of War with the modern games, but I feel like that'd be short-selling the classic series. I know saying that the God of War series was always deep is just about the coldest take one could have at this point, and the series isn't always the most subtle. The chains of Olympus worn on his arms, the ashes of his destruction soaked into his skin, Kratos is often a walking visual reminder of this story's real emotional power. What I find interesting about God of War, what I've always found interesting, is that it features a villain protagonist who damn well knows it. Walter White is the kind of villain protagonist who knows what he's doing is wrong, but can still find reasons to justify it to himself. Reasons that make him easy to root for in the beginning. No matter how bad his actions, he can find an excuse and sleep at night. Kratos, on the other hand, writhes in his self-loathing. He anguishes at the memories of all he's done, both to those who were deserving and those who were not. Rather than an excuse, Kratos finds refuge from his mistakes in further and deeper mistakes, allowing his vengeance to guide him only to more actions that he would continue to regret. Ultimately, this is what stripped Kratos of his humanity. By God of War 3, he's essentially running on pure rage, and Pandora serves as the only thing capable of igniting the last spark of hope in his soul, the last shred of humanity in this killer carcass of a being, and fittingly, that last shred is his paternal instinct, the desire to protect a child. And that brings us into the reboot, far removed from the world of ancient Greece, far removed from the hack and slash gameplay, far removed from the more lightened yet grim tone, and into the Norse realms, into gameplay centered around slower strikes and parries, and into a tone and story that is far more mature. Because while there was a serious, authentic Greek tragedy at the heart of the original trilogy, it was bound to a design philosophy of excess, a need to abandon tragedy, authenticity, and introspection at the drop of a hat if it fed the hunger for greater action and spectacle. 2018 brings the spectacle, but it also brings layers of depth to its writing, its main antagonists, the world, and beyond that, to Kratos himself. Hell, I could wax poetic about Freya for hours, but I want to zero in on just two characters, the two most important characters, Kratos and Atreus. God of War 2018 receives a lot of praise for its one long take gimmick, that if you were able to play the game in one sitting without pausing or dying, it would be one seamless shot across the entirety of your playthrough. But that gimmick, in my opinion, is at its strongest right here in the opening, following the perspective of Atreus as he mourns his mother and speaks a prayer, quickly panning over to the shadow of a god, to the towering, looming presence of a man he must trust without truly understanding. And there's so much to be understood, things even Kratos will not understand about himself by the end of this game. The first is communication, the ability to reach out to his son, to even acknowledge him as a son in many ways, and permit the emotional vulnerability that comes with that. The Kratos of old buried his pain with anger, with blistering rage, but as an older man we see that anger has diluted but still remains, smoldering rather than blazing but burning all the same. And that pain comes from genuine regret, but in a self-hating spiral. The lack of ability to connect with his son partly comes from his self-loathing, from his agony of past sins, from the deep fear that Atreus will turn out just like him. And it's the fear of the man that he used to be that forces him to close his heart to the suffering around him. The fear that even a momentary act, untempered by his wisdom, would lead to unspeakable agony. Every act he takes in this game is one step closer to rediscovering a shred of empathy, and even in that, he's imperfect. These games do a fantastic job of painting the world of God of War in strokes of very gray morality. It truly gets hammered home in Ragnarok regarding the conflict between light and dark elves, the debate between which side is right, and if there even is a right side, and whether or not Kratos and Atreus did more harm than good by interfering at all. But 2018 brings it into question in the climax and explicitly addresses it in the sequel. Is Kratos in the right or wrong for killing Baldur? On the one hand, his murder cements Kratos as the god killer even in this new era, robs Freya of her son and her agency, and begins the cycle of Ragnarok. On the other, there's no denying that Baldur would have kept hunting Kratos and Atreus, and that applies to their philosophy that it's always just to kill something that's trying to kill you. And it is Kratos' empathy that drives him, the fact that he does genuinely care for Freya and wishes to break the patricidal and matricidal cycle of godhood that provokes him to kill Baldur. In a lot of ways, this was the wrong thing to do, but it's the most right thing that Kratos does in this entire game. To kill Baldur is to reject the philosophy of closing your heart to the suffering, to intervene against injustice, and ironically, to prove that there is more to Kratos than violence. Atreus also benefits from this journey greatly as he battles with ego, identity, and empathy of his own. I think it's an incredibly wise writing decision to craft Atreus as such a perceptive character in many ways, while maintaining the naivety of a child. And it's always his empathy that allows him to understand those around him, to know one's intent and believe him better. And yet, he cannot find a way to empathize with the only family he has. It's this disconnect that creates both the game's best drama and its most heartwarming moments. I know we've all been on both sides of this interaction, hell, of just this line. You do not know my ways. You do not understand the way that I choose to process, and I do not fault you for the disconnect. And the journey of Kratos and Atreus brings them closer together, brings a connection where there was once a disconnect, and lays them on the path to have that connection tested by Ragnarok. I already made a video about Ragnarok back when I first played it, talking about Kratos and Atreus and their growth, but one aspect that still fascinates me, one which I still have more to say about, is the other half of their emotional journey in Ragnarok, the half which exists purely to test their growth in the previous game. I think we underestimate how important maintaining growth is, and I think it's because a lot of us can equate mental and emotional growth to being like physical growth. But you can't really get substantially shorter over your life, you know? Your height won't regress, your tree won't shrink, but the worst habits can always come back, and your worst mistakes can always be repeated. And we see this in both Kratos and Atreus, how Atreus returns to naivety, optimism at the expense of awareness. and how Kratos returns to violence as a solution, acting to protect without a moment's thought of the consequences. Especially worthy of note considering how Kratos' frustration with Atreus is that he wants to do his own thing without considering the consequences, the danger that his actions might pose to himself and others. It brings back a core trait of Kratos that was present in the original trilogy, but had seemingly since been buried: hypocrisy. Kratos was angry at the gods for, among other things, abusing their power. And the first act we see Kratos take as the god of war is an abuse of that power. He helps create the system which he claims to fight against, and that character flaw carries over into Ragnarok. Kratos claims he wants to grow and be better and end the cycle of violence that destroyed his homeland and is aiming to destroy the Nine Realms. But the second his son may come to harm, the ghost of Sparta rises again. We discount it a lot, but growth isn't linear, and an important part of it is recognizing and deterring regression. I love the utterly sincere choice to make that an integral part of both of these characters, make it a central factor in both of their growth and in the central themes of the game. Are you a slave to your worst failings? Can you be more than your former self? Is there such a thing as a former self, or are you simply confined to a nature instilled within you, to an immutable set of traits and qualities that will inform every choice you make for the rest of your life? Ragnarok answers some of these questions. Kratos does demonstrate the capacity and willingness to make a different choice during the invasion of Asgard, but honestly, some of these ideas are left unanswered. And frankly, I was fine to leave them so. I don't need every story to wrap up every loose idea. I don't mind a narrative that intends to ask a question with no easy answer, or perhaps no answer at all. I was content with these ideas either being left open-ended or expanded upon in the next game. And then Valhalla happened. I wasn't expecting much from God of War Valhalla. I expected a safe, simple expansion to Ragnarok that allowed for a more focused way to experience the game's stellar combat with some light smatterings of story and new enemy types. What I expected was really something along the lines of Spider-Man's The City That Never Sleeps pack, and what I got felt way closer to Spider-Man Miles Morales. Not in terms of the breadth of the content, but in how much it felt like a wholly new experience, despite being made primarily of recycled assets and mechanics. And while frankly I wouldn't mind if this was the final chapter in Kratos' story, it finally gives Kratos what he truly sought since the beginning of the Norse saga. Kratos hears it from Athena and from the Norns that he cannot change or be redeemed. But I think Valhalla gives him that, or at least gives him the beginnings of redemption. These games have spent a great deal of time showing that Kratos is capable of acknowledging his failings, his sins, his legacy of destruction, but not until now has he gotten the chance to reckon with them, which is an integral part of the redemption process. Kratos is essentially going through therapy in Valhalla, putting in the work to recognize that his worst mistakes may not be as bad as he perceives them, or that they weren't mistakes, or just more generally, that he needs to stop kicking himself for them. Excusing his misdeeds is not the exercise, but accepting them. The thing that I find the most compelling, surprise surprise, is this final scene. The only time we truly hear all of Kratos' inner thoughts as he lays into the man he used to be. What's interesting to me is how the writers, and often the fans, look at Kratos as if he were two characters, the classic and the modern. And this scene shows that as something of an aspect of Kratos himself. His word choice flowing from "you chose" to "I chose" and deliberately calling attention to himself as the same man rings true that Kratos accepts his failures. And the part that gets me most, Kratos does not truly know if he should sit, if he should reclaim the title of God of War, but maintains that he will, because he has hope. Hope in his own ability to grow, to learn, to inspire, to be better. I started out this video talking about me and my dad, how I grew up playing God of War 3 alongside him. The truth is, when I was playing God of War 2018, I felt like Atreus was me, that little kid staring up at his dad, knowing he loved me but finding it hard to connect, to relay that love. And as I've gotten older, that feeling has become clearer. I understand why he finds it hard to connect, and I understand why I find it hard to connect with him. And as that became clearer and I became older, I've also started to relate a lot more to Kratos. I'm impulsive and arrogant, and I have a bad temper. I've fucked up a lot, and it hurts to admit that. It hurts to try and move forward without looking back on my failures. But excusing them is not the exercise. Accepting them is. And I accept that I have done wrong and have the capacity to do right. I accept that I must be better than those who came before and than who I was before. And I accept that Valhalla was just as much therapy for me, the young man trying to do the next right thing and make the world a little more peaceful, as it was for Kratos, the esteemed former god of war looking to be something more than what others have seen. I know that I can do these things. I know that though I may fail, I can and will continue to try. That's why God of War means everything to me. Because Kratos has proven to be my god of hope. Special thanks to my buddies Omar, Christian, and Deverick for donating to the $10 tier on my Patreon. Sorry if I got a little emotional in this one. I played Valhalla. I finally got around to it, and boy, I got hit with a lot of emotions, and I kind of had to, I wanted to talk about God of War again, and I wanted to make a more personal video, at least in this section of the year, before I keep going to more of my analytical stuff. But yeah, if you like videos like this, please let me know. If you want to hear more of the personal stuff, please do not hesitate. And of course, sign up for the Patreon. You can do it for as little as $3 a month. You get exclusive benefits, early access to videos when I can manage it. And yeah.